And we are connected.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is Friday. We are now at the intersection of guns and mental health. Welcome to the WTTA podcast. Today, I'm going to be joined by Kevin Berry, my co host, and my good friend, and I would say WTTA MVP, Devin Perkins from Kids to Kings, as an organization that relies solely on basically good faith and volunteering and things like that. Devin has been a major player for promoting what WTTA does. So, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm well. I'm kind of tired. I haven't done a 9 a.m. podcast in a really long time. But thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, and what we want to get into today, obviously, I want you to talk a little bit about what you do with Kids to Kings real quick off the jump. But then we want to talk about some of this feel good legislation that is being thrown in the face of people from Colorado, and how that's going to affect all of us, and why it's important for the rest of the 2A friendly gun culture people to understand that this is a blueprint that's probably going to happen in every state if we keep losing these battles. But tell us a little bit about what you do with Kids to Kings. Obviously, we talk about it a lot, but it's better to hear it from you.
So Kids to Kings is the organization that you actually helped me start. It was honestly an idea that turned into a solution from a group of reformed degenerates. I remember me and one of my good friends, Trav, you know him.
Yep.
We were working together, and I remember in the news at the time, it was right around the Nipsey Hussle passing, and he had just gotten out of a whole life of running the streets in a gang. Me as well. We both ended up meeting actually in a Bible study group, and we just decided that we needed to do something to give back to the streets that we took from for forever. So that was our solution, was to figure out how we could help young people basically avoid and evade any of the issues and struggles that we did or we had growing up. And yeah, when I told you about it, you were like, hey, you should probably look up the study of complex trauma. And that was just that was like the Chronicles of Narnia, when the little girl opens the wardrobe and just sees a whole new world behind it. That's exactly what it felt like. Um, yeah, and it being such a new study, I just wanted to make sure that Black people, who I would say suffer from complex trauma and CPTSD the most, I just wanted to make sure that we were a part of that conversation. And it's been a fun, wild ride. We actually have a workshop coming up with our boys. Well, I guess I should rewind. We started doing a lot of presentations. It's kind of like if a if an up and coming like musical artist or talent was opening for a bigger one, I was basically presenting my Kids to Kings presentations at Black Guns Matter classes with Maj Toure. So basically, that's where we really started garnering a lot of more support and attention from those classes, because they were filled with people that we wanted to talk to. Simultaneously, COVID hit and we couldn't get into any schools or any of the centers that we wanted to. Then I got a call from Kevin Dixie, and he said that he wanted me to come to Georgia. Upon moving to Georgia, I ended up working at a school and was able to implement Kids to Kings into a charter school on the west side of Atlanta, where it was it was needed a lot. I'll say that. We've had some struggles, but overall, the boys are very receptive of the discussions that we have. A lot of it has to do with getting them out of their environment and then trying to teach them. And it's been fun. My director, Xavier, he's 21, a college student at Georgia State. He's there with them every day now, and we do everything. We are basically involved in every way possible. We do homework, we do workouts, we do just regular checks. one of them at least once a day. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
one of the coolest things I think about it too is you introduce firearms to them in a healthy manner, right?
yeah, yeah.
And
That's what I
that's
was gonna say. My bad. We
no, go ahead.
that is it. We had to focus on some of the more character building first with like impulse control and understanding like, yo, like if you want to really learn about guns the right way, you're gonna have to be mature when we do it. So we started doing it and they were very receptive of it. But the best workshop I can say that breaks the romanticization of poor firearms handling and like the myths that they see in rap and entertainment was the what we'll do is we'll take like 4 or 5 different rap videos and we'll put them on a screen, right? And then after they've learned the 4 firearm safety rules, they have to watch the videos and pick out who's breaking what firearms rule, and we'll stop it. They'll point it out, and yeah, it basically, um, to me, it's two faceted. It basically, or multifaceted. It breaks the influence that the rappers have on them, and they get to understand that, look, like yes, these people may have seemed cool before I got this knowledge, but now you kind of look goofy because all you like, I know better now. And that's really what it is equipping them with knowledge that when they're faced with certain adversities growing up, that they know how to deal with it. That way, trauma doesn't set in and develop bad subconscious habits. But that's the end of the rant. My bad.
No, it's excellent. I love it. What you're doing is so powerful because I just think of like all the influences I had in my life growing up, and this is a goofy example, but it's a true example. I remember one time, like someone I looked up to. I remember one time I had a cigarette, right, and I wanted to show this person that I was cool, and his name was Eddie. He was really cool, and he looked at me and he was like, "Man, we don't do that stuff. Like, why do you need that?" And that was like a huge, like that stuff, because I thought I was going to impress him. Like I was a bad boy. I was smoking a cigarette, da 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 da. And then he kind of turned away. I didn't think he was going to go, and I never smoked a cigarette again. Right? You know what I mean? Like, and that's
Yeah.
all it takes sometimes is just somebody to point out something that's goofy. And changes them, and it changes the direction of their life. And with what you're doing and introducing firearms, first of all, let's face it, like there are a lot of people that don't want underprivileged, underserved communities to even understand firearms at all. Almost like, hey, this is not for you. You know what I mean? This is a rich white man's sport or whatever. Like that type of mentality, that type of racist mentality. But you're teaching them something, and they're going to continue to pass that on to their friends, because there's nothing cooler than being, a 15-year-old kid who has a vast knowledge of a firearm and can actually teach somebody responsibly, right? We're creating more Devin Perkins and more Kevin Dixies. Right? Not everybody has that in their inner circle. So as many people that you can teach that, hey, the second is for you, but it's also a responsibility. I just think that's awesome, man.
Yeah. The gun is essentially just a shiny object in the room to teach them about everything that the gun is used to protect and why your life is actually valuable. So what boy doesn't like guns? We see them in movies, video games, everything. So yeah, it's really just the attraction piece. And then once they learn everything around it, it's not really like, even to me, it's kind of a byproduct of my philosophy with guns. Like I like them, but I like what they're for and the purpose of the Second Amendment. And that's really what I try to implement or instill into them, is that yeah, this stuff is cool, but you own a gun because your life is this valuable. And you are also a public servant as soon as you take on deciding to carry a gun, because you're the selfless person that's deciding to take action if something happens, no matter where you are, no matter who it is that's being or that is at the I guess the victim of any offense. You've decided to step up. So it's different. It's kind of putting a sense of responsibility on them that they can't really shake, because if you want to be a grown man, you have to be able to, be capable of violence. And if you can curate and guide the young testosterone that's pumping through these little kids now, then you avoid a lot of problems in the future. And we're seeing the success. We've even started grooming the one who we want to take Xavier's place, and he's 10 years old. So that's what I say. If we can keep us at like a 10-year pace, that we have somebody who's ready to take the reins every 10 years, and then we'll be good. I'm 31, Xavier's 21, so the next is the 10-year-old. So yeah,
Right. What's
trying to
the
continue to trickle down.
so how? I remember hearing somebody one time talk about kids in the inner city, and it was really interesting the way he phrased the issues that kids in the inner city have. And I remember he said, Parkland kids they go from home to school and they feel afraid in school. And he goes, kids from Oakland, because he was from Oakland. He said, they go from home to school, and where they feel safe is home and school. It's getting from home to school, school to home is where they don't feel safe. And I remember that stuck with me. How is it speaking with the kids about trauma and things that you kind of are supposed to man up about, and classic bravado and things like that? Do they do well when you bring up, hey, you can talk about trauma, you can talk about these things that you're seeing that are awful, that are going to have a lasting impact on your life?
Yes. And I guess the more we talk about it, the more they open up about it. So that's really the leading, I guess, leading tactic when we have those type of discussions, is to make sure that you're transparent. So me and Xavier will lead with anything that we've dealt with first, and then see who can relate to it. And then that's how we'll open up that discussion. And then they'll get to see that they're not the only ones dealing with what they're dealing with. And it helps, because it's not misery loves company. It's, okay, you're dealing with this, but we're here to fix it in a much more constructive way than any type of impulsive reaction that they normally would go about handling it with. So I would say, yeah, they handle it. They handle it pretty well. The bad part is, I guess, a bittersweet, is that they're good with talking about it because they're kind of desensitized and callous to it. But having them understand that what they're dealing with also isn't normal is kind of a line that we teeter on, because we don't want to have them looking for things to be triggered by, or looking for things to be a victim by. So if they already have some tough skin, we build on that. Like we don't allow moms on any of our field trips for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, we are trying to build tough-skinned, emotionally controlled, impulsive controlled men. And I think it's working so far.
That's good to hear.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you answered my question. Like I said, sometimes I want to make sure that I ask the right question, because I'm a little too close to it, because I've been there since day one and watched you grow this thing, and just for people to understand the importance of it. And I know, like, I saw you on I think John Crump's show the other day. I saw a clip of you actually saying, like, if we don't start getting to the youth, this is wrap.
Oh, it's
right?
dead. Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And speaking to Derek, I called Derek immediately, like on my way home from the state capitol in Colorado. I'll rewind to get
Derek
back
LeBlanc
to that. Yep, Derek LeBlanc. That is exactly who I call it. And
It's safe, yeah.
oh man, it was a very frustrating sight to watch. But to get into that story, what was it? Tuesday, we were at the state capitol of Colorado for people to speak about the assault weapons ban that's coming up here. It was rough. And I guess what really frustrated me was seeing those optics in other places other than where I've been doing the same thing in other parts of the country. And yeah, the anti-gun side did the stereotypical thing. Let me preface and say that I didn't actually get to speak because they called me too late and I had to go do another show. But a lot of gun people spoke. A few young kids got to speak that were, some of them were in college, maybe a little bit older, but the anti-gun side, it's called, I think, Project Enough. I think that's the new name of it. And they marched their high school kids in. They had pamphlets full of misinformation and indoctrination that had Project Enough plastered on the cover. Like, whoever was putting money behind these kids knew exactly what they wanted to happen. And it was just frustrating watching the same optics get destroyed by the anti-gun side, who have figured out, hey, if we use kids, no matter what, like, no matter what, we have a winning battle because, one, most of these old boomers don't know how to argue with a child that's a millennial, Gen Z, any of us, right? On top of that, they know how to pull the heartstrings. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if it's factual. If someone can get off a subjective, personal story about some type of fear-mongering gun violence that they're potentially going to experience if we don't get these weapons of war off the streets, it's mind-boggling how we haven't figured out how to combat these optics yet. And it's even more infuriating when you are a part of organizations that are the exact answer for what we're dealing with, and we just don't get the support. And I blew your phone up about it. I blew Maj's phone up about it. I texted Eric Pratt about it from Gun Owners of America. I texted Mike Bauer from USCCA, and I was putting out the call like, hey, I know you understand, but if we do not focus on getting to the next generation and getting them and equipping them with the right information, we are going to lose our Second Amendment rights because the other side has figured it out. They understand optics. They understand in a social media era that optics are probably the most important thing now. People's attention span don't really care about facts or the truth anymore. It's, you have to use optics. And once you break the trends of optics and people start listening, then that's probably when you'll be able to get your facts off and your position off. But I know a lot of us don't agree with it, and we always say facts matter, feelings don't, or emotions don't. But if someone is ignorant to what AR-15 is, and a high school girl is sitting in front of them telling them about their friends making dark death jokes when they do mass shooter drills at school, they're gonna side on the side of banning the gun if we don't know how to combat that with history, facts, or just nuanced information. I can give the subjective story of how gun control almost killed me in Chicago. So, like, when are we gonna start playing chess and stop playing checkers? Like, I don't get it. And even speaking to one of the heads of a gun organization out here, like, you could tell, like, he wasn't even willing to hear the conversation about focusing on kids. And I had to, like, kind of corner him in his position because he said he didn't agree with me and that we should be focusing on changing legislators. Well, I asked him, how are we going to change legislators? He said, get new ones. I said, how are we going to get new ones if we're not changing who's voting for the new ones? We have to change the culture if we want to change the legislators and people who are in power. So if I don't know, maybe you guys have a better answer, but I'm just getting frustrated. And obviously we're never going to stop doing the work, but it's just another PSA. Hey, Second Amendment, if we don't start learning how to get off script and ditch the rhetoric, it's over for us. And yeah, we're seeing it here. I've watched it everywhere. Like, and the crazy part is, it's not that like we're just saying this as a concept, right? Like, I've literally gone to David Hogg rallies and flipped people in his crowd. Maj has debated Moms Demand Action at a high school and wiped the floor with them. KD, same thing, has debated Moms Demand Action, destroyed them. Like, when are we going to start putting the people that understand how to combat these optics and these people who just want to ban guns as the solution? When are we going to start putting them at the front of the conversation and putting them on the platforms and the pedestals and giving them the support that we need? You spoke out of college. We just got done doing a college event. In November in Wyoming? Like,
Wyoming. Yeah.
Hello. Like, we're ready to do the work. Like, let us do it.
Well, one of the things that I want to stress, this is a tough one for me not to go off, but everything I've ever heard inside the firearms industry, and keep in mind, when I came in, I wasn't a 2A guy, right? I didn't understand it. I actually understood the importance of the 2A after I started working in the gun industry. And I learned that mostly by hanging around and getting an understanding of what's going on. But I have always heard from the jump that we will never get invited to speak at those things. So that's not going to happen. And all I've ever seen is us get invited and speak to those things. And then when someone says, hey, I'm going to go speak at that thing, people go, why would you go speak at a Moms Demand Action event? You know, like we tear the person down who's going to go into the lion's den to face these people and have healthy discussion and debate. Right. And then the second thing is they said that, hey, you'll never speak at college campuses. That'll never happen. They'll never have a gun person on there. Jake and I have done UNR. We've done Wake Forest. We did University of Wyoming, which we did together. We have Marquette coming up in May. So it can be done. Like it is possible.
I mean, we have a pro-gun mental health outreach program implemented in a middle school. Like, right. Yeah, there are no more boundaries for us. You know what I mean? Like, there's nowhere we can't go. Like, between me, you, Ashley, Maj, and KD, like, what optics can't we combat? You know what I mean? There is no script for us. There's no rhetoric that there's nothing that they can flip through their book of misinformation and be like, all right, this is what we use for them. Like, whenever we step in rooms and we see the opposition, their brains instantly are fried because they don't know what to say. Like, we're not leading with a pro-Trump NRA 1776, none of that. Like, we get straight to history, we get straight to the facts, and we get straight to how our communities are being misled and essentially deprived from rights that are going to help them actually be uplifted. Like, I literally heard one of the sponsors of the bill talk about how the Second Amendment and guns are being used to oppress minorities and other demographics. I was like, who isn't here? Like, that is a layup for like me, KD, anybody, like yourself. That is a layup of misinformation to just bat straight down. You know what I mean? Like, all gun control has been racist. You know what I mean? It's easy. And like I said, like, no one got up there and said anything that was enthusiastic enough to change anybody's minds. And I can take some responsibility for that because, like I said, I didn't actually get to speak because they essentially waited a lot of people out, like a lot of us out. And yeah, maybe if I did speak and rant the way I'm ranting right now, they would have heard me, but I don't know. I don't know.
I think you have to really work at it too. If you're listening to this and you're at home and you're like, I want to be that person. I want to go to events. I want to get out of my echo chamber and go speak. You're going to have to it's repetition. I didn't come out of that. You know, my first time speaking in front of an anti-gun crowd or a crowd that probably wasn't going to feel the same way I do about firearms, I didn't do great. You know what I mean? It took time, and I had to keep going out there, and okay, like this is what I learned from this last time that I spoke. Like maybe I got to do this or kind of touch on these subjects, or I got to get to this point faster. You have to practice at it. You have to want to do it. You have to want to get out of the echo chamber. It's real easy to go online on Instagram and any forum or chat, wherever you hang out, and sit in an echo chamber and just all shout the same things. You have to want to do it. And the importance of it is like, so when Jake and I went to San Jose State, that was another college, right? We spoke at a Moms Demand Action. Yeah. We got fried by the gun collective and all the 2A crowd. Why would you speak at that event? I mean, they had us on the flyer, which I was happy about. I was like, they gave us like the thing on the flyer. Like, that's cool. Watch, we're going to flip the script and change the narrative and control the narrative. You don't know how many people, and this is for people listening at home, after we were done speaking, we were just hanging out, right? And we got to watch all the ways that Mom Demand Action, what they do, right? Like their methods, it's brilliant. Your mind will be blown if you ever go to a Moms Demand Action event and watch them work, because they're very calculated and they're very crafty, and they will have you fighting against gun rights and you won't even know it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like if I had a sign that said, "Don't kill puppies." Who wants to save puppies? Everybody's going to be like, I like what this dude's talking about. Let's do it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, here, just fill this out and puppies will live. Like, they don't understand it. So when I was up there and we were kind of bringing the conversation back to suicide prevention and the stuff that really could make a difference, as opposed to the so-called violence that they talk about, right? Which everything's lumped together under one big gun violence banner. We had kids in the crowd that were, students that were coming up to us after, and they're like, "Hey man, like I saw you speak up there, like really cool. It's giving me something to think about." So my point is, if you just don't go to these events and speak, then you're going to let everybody have the narrative. Like you can't challenge anything. And we're not trying to flip the person who's got an agenda. Like, that's never going to happen, right? Because like David Hogg, he'll never be pro-gun. He makes too much money off of being anti-gun. There's no way you're going to flip that kid. But you could flip one of his so-called followers who's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just need to hear something else. I need to hear something from the other side that inspires me to think about this critically. You know what I mean? That's really why it's important.
I have a question for both of you. How do you think we got here? I forget who did it, but an exercise of what did something you believe in do wrong to have the middle ground kind of believe in the opposite side. So Devin, you've touched on maybe social media and some of that stuff, and then Mike, you can go after Devin, but what has the kind of 2A proponents done wrong or missed over the last 5-10 years to kind of leave us in this situation?
I would have to just say the consistent focus on appeasing a base that practices lazy politics, that just wants to pay for a $25, $50, $500 lifetime membership and think that their rights are being protected, while culture is just continuing on and passing them up with time. It's just an old approach. It's a microcosm of what we see with conservative politics. So it's a trickle-down effect. If you don't want anybody else exercising this right other than people that look like you or people that agree with your mindset or your perspective or your worldview, then that's all you're going to promote to, and that's all you're going to allow in. That's all you're going to put on platforms. We still deal with it, like, literally right now. Myself, Maj, and KD have the conversation all the time that a lot of these organizations only want Black people who they can control and the voices that they can make sure are going to say what they agree with. If anybody says anything that goes against what their base is and who's making sure that they have a job, they are not going to bring you on that platform for very long. They might highlight you here and there, but as far as doing work with you consistently, there are far and few between of organizations and companies that are 10 toes down and want to always be a support. So that's really it to me, is just people wanting their flavor of freedom. And being willfully ignorant to the times and how the Second Amendment doesn't look like the stereotypical old white guy with a orange vest and a lifetime membership hat on.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Kevin.
Struggling with the mute here. I'll give everybody else shit. No, I hate it. No, absolutely. I definitely have thoughts of my own because I'm newer into getting close to the 2A. But I know you and Mike have so much more experience in those environments and seeing what maybe you guys cringe at of being like, ooh, why did somebody that's on your same side go that way when maybe an adjustment and makes your kind of work harder.
Kevin, what are your thoughts? I'm curious. What are your thoughts as an outsider? Like this, Kevin's been learning a lot about just this culture just for his work with WTTA, right? Because he's capable of marketing. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for background, I came into WTTA, 2020? We started on the website and then kind of been behind the scenes ever since. But the main thing I see is, Devin kind of alluded to it, is that they have such a plan and structure for what they're doing that the gun side never gets the well-spoken or logical ideas that middle ground would be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I've never heard a single kind of argument until working with you, Mike, of all these kind of positive, maybe two-way legislation that you kind of have ideas around. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But then here we are struggling. I'd beg you for maybe a $200-300 ad budget on a big month for us, and we look at the competition, and they have $10,000 spent on Facebook ads in the single month. So that's the biggest thing of going on offense. I've heard around you, Derek, Jake, Devin, everybody's like, we got to defend the rights, defend the rights. No, that's not the right way in my mind. You got to have a plan and get well-spoken, logical ideas that make sense to those people that are on the fence. When they're only hearing logical ideas, like Devin said, they have a good plan. Why wouldn't you agree with that side when the 2A is just saying, no, we shall not be infringed? Have a better logical conversation around that and speak to the people that are on the fence. We already have all the people that support the 2A. You don't really need to go target your message towards them. Target the people that are on the fence and are really going to make the difference.
Yeah, we have to use the tactic of speaking to the person's crowd or audience instead of really trying to dig in and combat somebody whose mind is already made up. And that's what we did at David Hogg's rally. The kid was there. We didn't speak directly to David Hogg, but we spoke to somebody that was around him. And literally someone from March for Our Lives brought us to David Hogg and wanted us to speak in front of the crowd. So a lot of the times you have to, again, optics matter. If you are stuck getting into arguments over semantics and not really digging into the important nuance of the discussion, then yeah, you've lost. You've lost. If you're really sitting there arguing over like what muzzle flip is to somebody who doesn't know what recoil management is, like what are we talking about? You're actually playing into the opposition side and speaking over someone else's head and essentially wasting time until they can get back to their presentation or whatever anecdote about more gun control and why these guns don't need to be in our community streets. And yeah, speaking back to what Mike was talking about and how we'll get attacked by some people within the gun industry or the 2A industry. That to me is just more of a projection of how they would handle the situation if they were in the rooms with those people. Like they're stuck on script. They have very few articulate ideas or perspectives or positions that can combat what we're talking about. And if you just go look at the events that they put on, you'll see what I mean. Like you can see what their next generation panels look like when it's everybody with gray hair. You know what I mean? Like it's okay, like stay in the echo chamber, bro. Like whenever you want to get to the real work, let us know and we'll point you in that direction. But when it comes to those people, to me, they're not important anymore. Like, if you're not doing something to be a resource and preserve this right on a daily basis, other than sitting in a chair, like we're doing right now, sitting in a chair and talking to a mic, if that's all you do, I don't have much to say to you. You're a commentator. Like, you are literally to a ESPN. That's it. Like, you are not a player in the game. And that's it. I had to get that little rant off about that, because those
No,
people get on my nerves.
I think this collective group, and I see us as a collective group trying to form something. This is getting a lot better. I don't want it to seem all doom and gloom, because when I first started this industry and I got in '98, I mean, whoa, like you, Devin, you'd have walked in and been like, okay, I'm out. You know what I mean? So it is moving in the right direction. You're seeing a lot more diversity within this community, and we're getting better at it. It's just like a slow moving ship, right? And that's how I always feel. And I'm a big believer in you're never there, so you got to keep working at it no matter what. But I think one of the biggest issues we have as the 2A community is we literally think that everybody thinks exactly like us. So if you're pro-gun, you're most likely conservative, and you're anti-abortion, and you know what I'm saying? Like you check all the boxes of the red side, right? And I think like that's been one of the things, Kevin, like you say, like, where have we gone wrong? I think that's been a huge issue, is forgetting that there are a lot of people, and like my mom is one of them. She's a perfect example. I like to use her as an example because I have to put her in check sometimes, like when she says something about guns, and she's pro-gun in her mind. She owns a lot of guns and she's very pro-gun, but she still will sometimes, you know, because she's in her own echo chamber, say some dumb shit, right? But overall, like, guns is not the hill my mom is going to die on. Okay, my mom is a feminist. My mom believes in a woman's right to choose. So that's her hill to die on. So she's going to always vote that way. It's a non-starter, right? Whereas most people in the 2A community, it starts with voting for your Second Amendment rights, and then everything else is secondary.
Yep.
What we have to understand is we're never going to flip my mom, but my mom is a valuable asset, just like the people from the liberal gun owners and the crew from Liberal Gun Club. And is that let them vote how they're going to vote. They're going to do that. Okay. But use their love for the Second Amendment and have them be talking, like the people presenting the information, that are presenting the talking points. We have to get over the whole politics thing, I think, because not everybody thinks like you. And to kind of jump into the next subject is, as someone who owned a gun company who used to sell 60 to 80,000 guns a year, I promise you, the majority of gun owners in the United States are not like you, right?
Right.
The majority of gun owners, they don't watch movies and look for trigger discipline. They don't understand muzzle flashing. Like, they buy a gun for their house, they put it in a safe, and that's the end of them thinking about the Second Amendment, right? And that's the majority.
Funny that you say that, because I literally did that last night. I watched Land of Bad for the first time, and my girl was asking me how it was, and I was like, it was good. The gun discipline was all right. So, like, honestly, if it's bad gun handling in a movie, it will destroy it for me. And I'll even, it's funny because I even used to have to preference women when I would watch movies with them. Like, yo, like, let's not watch anything with guns in it, because you're gonna never want to watch a movie with guns in it with me again, like, ever. And yeah, like, no, like, to have someone, like, you know, comedically understand that, it does show that, like, yeah, no one is thinking about guns the way we do. Even military people. Like, I went on a date with a chick from the military. She said that she knew about guns. got on the line, immediately started teacupping. I was like, yep, here we go. Like, no one, like, we are a percent of a percent that pay attention to the stuff that we pay attention to. Ken Scott, he's very good at keeping that in perspective and with his instructions now, and really focusing his content and his curriculum on the everyday person that owns a gun. Yeah, it's all about creating liaisons. Like, if we both know, me and the anti-gunner, right? If the person watching knows that we both are trying to keep kids safe, but we have different ways of getting there, good ideas are going to beat bad ideas. So, like you said, if you're not there to present good ideas and oppose bad ideas, all the person is going to go with is that idea, because if anything, it's a solution to them to an issue that they think is a bigger issue than it is. You know what I mean? Like, and fear mongering is such a valuable tactic on that side, because they will really have you thinking like that there are just people walking around grocery stores with AR-15s. And it's like, come on, like, the first thing that you can do is implement logic to the situation, and just ask the audience, the crowd, whoever is being spoken to, like, how often do you see a gun on your everyday basis? Like, when's the last time you really held or saw an AR-15 other than on the screen? So how important, or how affected is your life by this thing that is being talked about right now? Is it polarizing? Yes. But is it really that big of an effect on your life? Probably not. Like, how many mass shootings really happen a year? You know what I mean? As opposed to the days that you go through your life. We have to stop letting the loud and the extremes be the voice of movements. And that's really what it is. If we're all about safety and resources and stopping violence, which we all are, then we have to be there to, be the adults in the room and not let a bunch of freaking I won't even go there because that would ruin what I all just said. But yeah, the women in those rooms are infuriating. I got into it with the Moms Demand Action Karen. Like, she came and sat next to me and then tried to shush me. And Mike, you know how that goes. You know how that goes.
Talk about that real quick, though. That's kind of funny. I want to hear, how did you get shushed?
So we're listening to the testimony, and they had just flooded the room. I mean, you could see it. Like, I turned around and all I see is a bunch of high school kids walking into the room. I was like, oh, here we go. Like clockwork. They were in there, and I was just calling it like I was watching a football game. Or I likened it to a rap battle, because if it was a rap battle that day at the Capitol, pro gunners would have got swept in a four round sweep. It would have been over. Like, there was no competition. And as I was calling them out for playing optics and using kids as manipulation, or for manipulation, this Karen comes and sit next to me, and I guess she was taking notes or something, and like is trying to tell me to be quiet. And I'm like, I'm gonna be honest, like, I got rude, very rude. I was like, woman, you can like go sit somewhere else. Like, there are closer seats to the TV. Like, you're not about to get in here and like no, like the smug arrogance of Moms Demand Action, Shannon Watts and the rest of her clan, because that's what I call them. I said the red Moms Demand Action shirts are the new KKK robes. Like, y'all are the most disingenuous, lying organization I have ever seen. And if it was up to me, and if I had the power of the 2A community, you would be my focus. Legislators are cool. Lobbyists are cool. Competitive shooters are cool. But Moms Demand Action, like everyone on this show has already said, they've figured out the optics, and that's what they're going to do. I know I went off on like a complete left turn.
No, it's all good. I wanted to see what the circumstance was. But when the kids go into the room, right, and you see these young kids, and then you got to argue against like what they feel or or the reality of some of the school shootings, I always liken it to if I fought Ronda Rousey, right? Like if I fought Ronda Rousey, I don't win either way, because if I beat her, I beat a girl. And if I fight her and she kicks my ass, like I lost my ass kicked by a girl, right? So I feel like when they do that, when they bring those kids out, they're at a huge advantage there, and it's very intelligent to do, right? Because I mean, I remember seeing a commercial. I can't remember who did it. It was about school shootings. And in the commercial, these kids are like running through the school, and there's like kids getting shot, and like they're texting their family members, and they use kind of humor, dark humor in it. Like they're just like, yeah, this new backpack helps me shield bullets or something like that. Da, 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 da. I don't know. And I remember watching that and saying, oh my God, like checkmate. Like they got us. Like that was so powerful, like the way they did that, right? Because as a parent, I think about if that was happening and my daughter was running around that school. You know, I always say this, and Kevin knows this. They don't teach them about fentanyl, which is what's probably going to kill my daughters, right? Like they're going to be at a party sometime, and some cool kid is going to be like, "Yeah, try this," and there'll be fentanyl in it. They don't teach them about that. But they do school shooter drills, which are absolutely pointless. It reminds me of the airplane telling you about a water landing. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we're not getting to water.
The seatbelts on airplanes. Like, what are we
but yeah, it's rough when they do that, and it's calculated, and it's a brilliant move, and we have to go into those type of debates knowing that they're going to pull that card, and how do you get around that, right? And the way that I've always found that, like when I was speaking at San Jose State, was meet them where they're at, like Jake says, right? Like talk about how awful it is, talk about, you know, this that, and address it. And that's the best way you can combat that, in my opinion. But you're never going to beat that. You're never going to beat the heartstring tugs that they're going to have on these kids, because they're right. Like no kid should ever be in the middle of a gunfight. And it doesn't matter what city or school you're in, right? Like that's what we try to do, is shield them from this horrible thing we call life. But having said that, so what's some of the other legislation that is coming through, not just the AR ban, and also too, for people that are listening that might not really understand what that is, like what are you guys looking at in Colorado right now in total?
Oh, it's bad. They say assault weapons ban, but it's going to cover everything down to a regular Glock with a threaded barrel. So they're coming for everything. They've listed the type of guns that they want to ban. The other legislation, not necessarily that they passed, but more so that they shot down. One was theft of a firearm being a felony and punishable by multiple years in jail. They actually shot that down. On top of that, they decided to give the Bureau of Investigations of Colorado a $1.7 million raise. So to me, you're lightening up on crime, you're giving the police and government more money, and you're restricting citizens from being able to protect themselves. To me, all you're doing is manufacturing more crime and ensuring that the pockets of the people in power are lined with as much money as they can get from the numbers that they will be able to provide after this round of legislation goes through. And it'll take some time, but eventually we'll see it. Crime in Colorado is already on the rise everywhere. And for people like us from like the East Coast, like it's really not that bad, but you can see it getting worse and worse and worse. And yeah, to me, it's a concerted effort to make sure that whoever is in control of the government stays in control and gets more control. And that's it.
Yeah, Colorado has notoriously been a very good state for firearms, right? Because you have a lot of like rural areas, people grow up hunting.
Yeah,
it's outdoors.
The trickle down really started with the magazine ban. I think that happened in 2013. when companies like Magpul had to get up out of here. And yeah, it's been a trickle down from what a lot of people say is that liberals will move to a city and then implement their politics into the city. If you know that that's a tactic, why don't you combat that tactic? Like, people are moving there doesn't mean anyone's necessarily moving out of your state. So what are you doing to maybe even change the minds of the people that are coming to your state? Like, are you doing anything to welcome them? Or is it just, hey, we don't want these California hippies in my state and they're gonna have to pry for my cold dead fingers? Like, that's really what it is. And I feel like we're just beating a dead horse, but it has to be said. We cannot continue to use these old, outdated tactics. And yeah, if we're really about freedom, we have to understand that someone that owns a gun might not agree with what we agree with.
Yeah. So what what's the next step with this legislation? Where you walked out of there, you sound like we took an L that day.
Oh, they definitely took it out. The bill passed 7-3 to 1, and it gets voted again at, I believe, the House, and then it goes to the governor's desk. And Colorado has a super Democrat majority in the House and the state Senate. So if it gets to the governor's desk, that's probably the only hope that they have for it not to pass. Granted, there was, I believe, between 200 and 400,000 signatures on the petitions to knock it down, but those papers don't matter. It's the greenbacks that matter, and that's what's pushing this through.
How many, in your estimate, like if you're looking at sides, right, when you're there, and you're looking around, how is our showing as the 2A community? I know you don't agree with everyone that may be there, but how did we show out?
I'd say it was a 50-50 split, to be honest. I did hear that towards the end of the testimonies that the pro-gun side had testimonies from beginning to 10-12 p.m. I think the last person that I heard speaking was at 11 p.m. And anti-gunners actually ran out of people to testify at around like 9. But honestly, at that point, like, everyone knew, like, when we walked in there that the voters were going to vote the way that they were. We were just there to last ditch efforts. So it was a decent showing. But again, it's all about being proactive and showing up like this before it gets to a vote. You know what I mean? Changing people's minds before it gets to the government's hands. And that's where we failed. Like, we can show up and rally and do all this stuff all day long, but if we're not going to continue that type of enthusiasm every single day, then it doesn't matter. It's a pep rally.
Yeah. Yeah. And Colorado it's had some tough shootings, right? So there's a lot of victims and people that have been involved in these shootings that they can pull from. A lot of heartstrings to be tugged. I mean, Columbine was the jump off for a lot of these school shootings. It was like, it's the OG, right? And it was, I remember watching that as it was going on live in Jersey. And I remember my uncle and I were sitting there, and my uncle owned Eagle Imports at the time. He like looked at me and goes, "There goes my 5-year plan." Like, because I remember we were like, "This is bad." So there's probably so many generations of people there now that just have this hate for firearms. They need to blame something. And, that AR-15 represents something super evil to them. You had the Aurora Theater, the shooting in Aurora, the theater. There was the grocery store one. I mean, there's been some bad ones. So yeah,
which I understand, but like, I don't want to put it like this, but that's almost like every week in Atlanta. or
Right. There's
our
a
friend
million
Mike
people
Waller
from the
who
hood that are like, okay, welcome to
yeah,
our
like,
world.
and I made that point when I was standing in the room, and I know a lot of people heard me. Like I was being vocal for a reason, but I was like, okay, like I understand where you're coming from, but like Mike's son had to watch him shoot somebody at the age of 6. You know what I mean? Like I get it, but like freedom is dangerous. One, two, it really like we have to address that this only matters when it gets to white people's steps and
100%.
the doors of white people. You know what I mean? Like the same thing
100%.
with the opioid epidemic. Like where was all this love and compassion during the crack epidemic? We were super predators that needed to be locked away, according to Joe Biden. You know what I mean? Like where was all of this then? No, it matters now that Susie and David are addicted to opioids and are overdosing. Yeah, I understand, but we could have addressed this a long time ago, and we wouldn't have had to deal with it now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That was one
it's
of
a
the
lot of yeah. Go ahead, my bad.
No, that was one of the coolest things I ever saw Kevin Dixie do. So you talk about playing chess. We talk about putting the right messenger forward, right? Jake and I had the opportunity to speak to somebody on a high level in the state of Nevada. And what we were pushing for was trying to get the red flag laws and the transfer laws rewritten. We knew we couldn't get them overturned, but we were taking a shot at trying to get them rewritten. And this person that we were working with, and I will not name her, because I don't think it's fair, and it's not important for the story, but she could not see our point of view. And let's face it, Jake and I are the typical. I mean, we look like gun guys, right? Like I pride myself on not being the gun guy, but as my beard gets whiter and my hair gets whiter and I get older and I start getting closer to 50, I have to realize that I look like the stereotype. Okay, so. I appreciate that. So what I like to do is I like to set the perfect messengers forward. So my first 2 phone calls, because I did get this person to actually say, hey, I said, if I can get somebody to talk to you, it doesn't look like me, would you be willing to listen? Right. And, to her credit, she was like, absolutely. And right away, I called Kevin Dixie and I called Lara from Liberal Gun Club. I said, I need you to get on this call. And the way I was strategically looking at Lara is like, you're her. You're a middle-aged white woman, but you're about to say exactly how she feels or where she thinks she's coming from, but you're coming from a pro-gun point of view. So like
Yep.
that's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be looking at it like a mirror. And then I said, and then I'm gonna bring Kevin Dixie in. And obviously we've heard Kevin speak enough. You listen to Kevin all the time, right? Like
Every day.
Right. Kevin will give you the most amazing speech that sounds like it's really important. It's about going to get milk from the fridge and making sure you check the expiration date, right? Like you walk away inspired. But so he's on this call. Lara goes and she does this beautiful job of just like presenting the facts. And then he goes. And I remember like he ends this speech and he goes, stop acting like you care about kids dying. You don't care about kids dying. You only care when they look like the kids from Parkland. When they look like my son, you don't care because my son is dying every day and nobody says a word. And literally ends it, right? And you could feel it in the room. Like you just like what he did was so powerful. And of course, she's hearing him speak for the first time. So like this is, something like this is amazing. And she starts crying. And we were all like, whoa. Like that is not what we were expecting, right? But she was crying and she goes, I'm sorry, I'm emotional. I'm crying. I'm not crying for any other reason than you're right. I'm sorry, right? Like I'm sorry. Like I never thought of it that way. And it took Kevin's beautiful speech and beautiful words to literally like change her thought process. Now, in the end, we didn't win. We didn't get it, but we got to say it. And she got to understand it. And Kevin was right. You know what I mean? And this goes back to, I think of the movie A Time to Kill. right? I don't know if you ever saw that movie. Kevin, I don't know if you ever saw that movie. Listeners, I don't know if you ever saw it. I think it was Matthew McConaughey. I think it was called Time to Kill. Samuel Jackson's daughter gets raped, and he shoots the people that did it, and
Right.
it's a lawyer movie. And I remember at the end of the movie, Matthew McConaughey, he's like, he tells the jury to close their eyes, right? And he basically tells the story of the little girl getting raped and what they did to her. And then he's like, he says, like, close your eyes and now picture that she's white. And that was like the game changer, right? Like the jury had to put themselves in that situation. It wasn't just a little black girl that they didn't care about. Now every parent, I watched that movie with my uncle. My uncle had a daughter and he was bawling because it did what it was supposed to do. And I think that's how we have to address this stuff, right? Like, you're right. We do only care about it when it's Parkland kids. And I think the gun industry needs to be the leaders in pointing that out, and even maybe taking responsibility for some of that stuff of letting that get too far. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, we were idiots back then. We didn't think about these things. But if we're trying to move forward, we have to accept negative outcomes. We have to realize that some people on this planet have been dealing with these negative outcomes a lot longer than from the time Columbine happened to now. They deal with it on a daily basis, right? So that's my rant and soapbox. I'll jump off.
I 100% agree. And something that we can speak about personally was last year when we had to deal with just like you've been saying, like, if you mention Parkland shooting, you know exactly what we're talking about, right? But if I say Atlantic Station shooting, then Atlanta, nobody's going to know that 20, 14, 15-year-olds had a shootout and 2 kids got murdered that day. No one's going to know what I'm talking about, but everyone's going to know what Parkland is. It speaks to exactly what you're talking about. It only matters when white kids are getting affected. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's not a talking point. It's real, and it may be subjective, but we experienced it firsthand.
Yeah. I think that it's important to address. I think that every negative outcome is something that we should run right towards, because the anti-gun side never expects us to lean into that. And the faster we do that, the more we say, okay, yeah, you're right, this is happening, and here's what we're doing. Like, when I go speak at events, I love when they bring up underprivileged, underserved communities, because it's a good segue for me to talk about your work with Kids to the Kings, right? And then the first thing I always lead off with is introducing firearms responsibility in a healthy manner, because no one ever gives these kids a shot to learn that. And I know everybody that's in the room has to think about that, especially if you're center left. Because if you're center left, what you're basically banking your whole life on is that you're just, and you're looking out for equality, and you're looking out for everybody is equal. And you know what I mean? So you gotta remind them that, hey, don't be a low key racist, dude. You know what I mean? Like, like you think you're doing the right thing, but you're actually making yourself look like an idiot. These are the things you got to keep in mind. So, I appreciate that you're out there doing what you're doing. And, I'm glad you're here for checks and balances to point these things out. I've always said, going back to Kevin's question, we didn't really have checks and balances before. We didn't, in the 90s, in the early 2000s of the gun industry, it really was what everybody said it was. As much as I didn't want to admit it, it looked like an old man, white dude convention.
The country club. It was a good old boys country club. Yeah. And yeah, there, like I said, there are more people out there, even here. Like, the reason why I'm even in Colorado, DCF Guns, they're a gun shop that gets it. Like, they told me, and Mike, you of all people will understand how severe and how important this is. They told me, you can push the line as far as you want without crossing it, and we will back you. They told me that. So if you're able to tell me to push the line, then you get it. And if we can just get more people out here that get it and understand and are ready for any backlash that they're going to take on because they have to lead the conversation, the better. Yeah, there are a couple more gun shops out here that are doing the work, but I would say, I mean, obviously I'm going to be biased because that's who I'm here associated with, but there are definitely companies that are ready to push the new message forward. So not every gun store is the same old, you know, echo chamber or you know, full of gatekeepers that don't want new people. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't sound 100% black pill that like we're the only ones. But yeah.
Yeah. So, Kevin, I love doing this to you. What's your takeaway?
uh, I don't know, especially with this conversation in general. I feel like it's don't judge a book by its cover, and we need to get out and write that story ourselves instead of let other people write it.
Yep.
Just the other day, Mike, we were talking, and you had some healthcare organization. They're like, "Oh, we need you to speak at blah blah blah." They're really far right, and what maybe this connection of yours too, and you're like, that would be the worst person to send. They're actually liberal, but everybody just assumes it's the stereotypical gun owner, and we got to fix that and put out our thinking and other solutions that we see instead of just the one solution that's coming from the anti-gun side. I know so many people that are pretty gun neutral can spout out, oh, why do you need an AR, blah, blah, blah. And I can be like, well, in this case, yeah, obviously I'd want an AR versus this. And they're like, oh, I never even thought of that. Having those conversations and get those conversations out there is kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, the whole AR thing, it really is an interesting argument, because when I first got in the gun industry, I didn't understand it either. And because no one ever explained it to me, because my family dealt with just handguns. So they never sat there and told me the importance of this argument. You know, they just assumed probably I knew it or whatever, right? So I had to learn the importance of it and actually learn, like, mechanically, and kind of come to that understanding that banning ARs to try to reduce gun deaths is the equivalent of banning red sports cars to stop drunk driving. Like, yes, will people who don't have red sports cars be able to drive drunk? Yeah, but are you going to stop drunk driving? You're not even going to put a dent in. Like, it's not even going to happen. So it really is interesting when people say the AR thing, and it's really lazy on their part to not understand it, because all that information is there. And I get it. Like, if you're not a gun person, you're going to have to be told repeatedly over and over again why, right? Like, and I've always accepted that. And that's what I always say to, like, Mental Health America or the people in any other organization that I work with. Like, feel free to ask me this 10 times. Like, I get it. Like, you're not going to remember the reasoning, and you're not going to be able to put these arguments forth when you're at a dinner party and someone says, well, they should just ban ARs, that'll fix things. But it always blows my mind that that information is there. And that's one thing I think we do need to get better at. We do need to get better at explaining that argument, because that's a big one, right? Like, how do you and I don't know if I don't know if there is a script where it's easy to explain. I think sometimes you have to build trust with people where they want to sit down with you and, like, really take that information in, as opposed to, like, oh, I watched this little documentary real quick, or this little 5-minute, vignette that kind of explained the difference in why it's problematic. And you're essentially banning all, semi-automatic, firearms if you're banning an AR, just under the guise of, like, mechanically of how it works, but I get asked that all the time.
One of the tactics I use is I ask the person who's advocating to ban ARs is, whenever an AR is used in offense, so mass shooting, an attack, something, right? Who are we calling and what are they using to combat or to neutralize that threat or offense. They're using an AR. So right there, you have to understand that it's not the gun, it's who's behind the gun. If you're calling someone with the exact same style of gun to neutralize that person, it can't be the gun. It has to be the motive of the person who's holding it. Yeah, that's just one of the ways I try to insert logic into the conversation. Like, hey, like you're saying it doesn't belong on our streets until you call one to be on your streets in your favor. So yeah, I understand that, if we have them ourselves, we might not need to call somebody else. You know what I mean? Be your own first responder. But yeah, man, it's rough. I don't know. I don't know where Colorado goes from here. Yeah, I remember when I first got here, I contacted minimum 50 schools about starting up free classes with Kids the Kings and DCF, and there wasn't, any response at all. So what DCF and myself are trying to do now, we're going to actually just open up our doors and create our own curriculum and bring people to us if we can't, go to them. So again, DCF is the new vehicle that is allowing me to do the work of, expanding the Second Amendment in the right way and focusing on creating a larger base as opposed to an insulated echo chamber of people that think like me, which I don't think anybody does. So, yeah.
So what, just to kind of wrap this up, because we're getting short on time here, but what, for anyone that's in Colorado that can make a difference and you can have a plea right now, right? Like, what would you tell them to do about this situation? Is there anything anyone can do at this point, or is it just now it's in other people's hands?
As far as like legislative and getting involved politically, I would follow Rocky Mountain gun owners and get involved with anything that they have going on. They've basically been the leading voice of the fight against this ban. Personally, what you can do is find somebody younger. If you support the Second Amendment, and you're a part of an organization, whether it's a veterans organization, chambers of commerce, an HOA, anything like that, find a younger, youthful, energetic ambassador and be their resource and their backing to be the voice of the next generation. That's all we can really do. Like, that's something that I personally pump into Xavier's head every day that I talk to him is, you are the next one. Like, I want to ascend to an invisible entity that can just be a resource for whatever you want to do. So just give somebody the nepotism to preserve their God-given rights and be in the fight with them.
Yeah.
Introduce them to the fight and being there with them. That's really all we can do at this point. Anything that DCF Guns is going to be involved with, we're going to be heavy because I'm leading that. So yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you, or where can they check you out?
If you want to contact me, dperkins@dcfguns.com. You can email me there. Instagram, Kids the Kings, and the link to donate to Kids the Kings is in our bio. So please help us out with that. We actually have a firearm safety workshop coming up with Kevin Dixie in Atlanta for the boys' spring break in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The first week of April, we'll be in Atlanta. We're doing a class there, and then we're going to Auntie Angie's house, which is a outreach home for single moms who have just had their first child or need some assistance. We're going to do a free firearm safety class for them, and we're bringing the boys with us so they can be involved in that too. If
I want
support,
to add something real quick, because we've been helping you out in terms of like the work you do. You never, ever, and this is for the listeners, anytime you get a lot done with very little. You do. And no, you need to be commended for that, man, because like you've always been above board. You've always shown me. Sometimes you go out of the way and I'm like, Devin, like, like I don't need to be bothered with this, but like you want to make sure that I understand that it is going there. And what you do, feeding the kids, getting them on these like so-called field trips, right? They're like field trips out of their environment to, yeah. You know, even if you have $10 and you donate it to Devin directly, or you put it in WTTA, right? Because that works that way too. Like I'm going to give a shout out to Lara Smith from the Liberal Gun Club, who's been donating to WTTA, and I just take that donation because it was for Kids to Kings and it goes directly to these kids. But even if it's $10, that goes a long way. Some of these kids, you know, you're paying for a kid's lunch. Like that's nothing, right?
I mean, literally, I was going to say that is literally it. You are at least paying for one of those boys to eat that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want people to understand that it's hard to give your money to anybody, right? Like, because you want to make sure it's going to the right places. And you know, you're one of the people that I know, you know, like I think of you and I think of Derek LeBlanc from KidSafe, and I know the work you guys put in, and it's legit, you know. So I encourage everyone to donate. If you have a little, it goes a long way. So I appreciate that. And then I want to ask you one final question before we hop on out of here. But how are you tending to your mental health these days, man?
You and Jake? You, Jake, and Kevin Dixie, man. I don't care what time of day, night it is. I actually have y'all kind of in schedules. Like, I know when I can call you. It's normally like middle of the day-ish. Jake is like evening, like a little bit, probably till like 9 p.m. Kevin Dixie's the night owl that I can call literally whenever. But and not in a more serious manner. I have a network of very solid grown men that have poured into me that are a resource for myself. So yeah, I always tell people like I'm good. Like when it comes to the mental health thing, like I'm as good as I think I'm gonna get and getting better. So yeah, it's the work. And even starting Kids to Kings was going through therapy myself, dealing and learning the curriculum of complex trauma and CPTSD. So, just staying steadfast and using gun therapy. I'm at the range. I shoot at least 500 rounds a week now. So, yeah, this is my therapy right here.
Use a little lead therapy. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right. Well, on behalf of all the sponsors for WTTA, the reason why we're here, the Arms Corps, the Rugers, the Lipsies, the Davidsons, the Chattanooga Shooting Sports, all these people that make this possible, the USCCAs, I want to thank you. Kevin, is there anything you need to add to this conversation?
No, I put some useful links to Walk the Talks page on Kids to Kings in the live chat, and I'll put it in the podcast episode when it drops. But
last shout out, Felons with Firearms. Felons with Firearms is a DIY book that will show you how to get your rights back if you're a felon that's lost your firearms rights. It's my boy Devin in Virginia. He does a lot of good work and has been doing the work for a very long time, essentially on the outskirts of the Second Amendment community, and not very many people know him, but he's doing a lot of great things. Am I allowed to give more shout outs, or are we about to just
give some shout outs? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Well, again, DCF Guns here in Colorado. During the Mental Health Awareness Month, we're going to be hosting something for WTTA. Kids to Kings, please go donate because we can use as much support as possible. Like you said earlier, Derek LeBlanc, Black Guns Matter, No Other Choice Firearms Training. If you support me, you support them. If you support them, you support me. So, and then the last resource I always love to shout out is Ashley Lubinsky. I texted her as well in the middle of the Senate hearings, and she gave me a laundry list of information. I asked her one question. It was like Chat GPT, and it was just boom, 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 boom. So yeah, shout out to her too. Shout out to everybody who is changing the face of the Second Amendment, whether we're getting pushback or not. So yeah, our collective league of different people. Shout out to all of them.
Yeah, shout out to Clover Tech. Shout out to Brandon Covey, they've been all in the chat. Like, these are the people that are making differences, and I agree with you. Ashley is like, she is a ninja. She, you know what I mean?
Look,
like, these are the people that we got.
Ashley is probably in my opinion, Ashley is top 3 most important people in this industry because of what she does and the optics that she combats. I challenge anybody to try to figure out what Ashley's political alignment is.
100%. Yeah, and she's a WTTA board member, and I saw the brilliance in her the very first meeting. I was like, we have to get her involved in this. Yeah, so I've been blessed there. But all right, everybody, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. Kevin, get us out of here.